You ever feel that tension in the air? That kind that doesn't just sit on your skin. It crawls under it, like something bigger, older, colder is watching. Not with curiosity, but disappointment. You can feel it, can't you? That silence that's too heavy, that chill that doesn't come from the weather. It's not fear exactly, it's realization. The sense that you've crossed a line you didn't even know was there. That you kept playing the game, laughing, pretending, while something patient was waiting. And now it's done waiting. You've pushed too far. You've ignored too many warnings. And now the air itself feels like it's demanding you stop. Whatever you're doing, end it now. You know that feeling, don't you? That eerie silence, after you've done something you can't take back. It's not the sound of peace. It's the sound of consequence creeping in. You start to notice how the air feels heavier, how the world looks a little different, how even the smallest sounds echo louder than before. That's not paranoia. That's the moment you realize you've been warned before. Again and again. And you didn't listen. And now, the warnings have stopped. Because they don't need to repeat themselves anymore. You've already made your choice. Warnings aren't loud, not at first. They whisper, a feeling in your gut. A strange coincidence. A bad dream that lingers too long. You brush it off, tell yourself it's nothing. But it wasn't nothing, was it? It was that invisible hand tugging at your sleeve, saying, don't do this. But you did. And each time you ignored it, the voice got quieter. Not because it stopped caring, but because it knew you weren't listening. That's the cruel part about mercy. It doesn't last forever. It's patient, but not infinite. People always think punishment is loud. They expect thunder, fire, chaos. But that's not how it works. Punishment starts with silence, with absence. When the voice that used to warn you goes quiet. When the gut feeling that saved you before is gone. That's when you know the final warning's already passed. That's when the universe steps back and says, fine, you choose. It doesn't have to destroy you. It just lets you destroy yourself. And that's far more poetic, don't you think? Watching someone dig their own grave while believing they're building a throne. You remember all those times you thought you got away with something. Those moments where nothing bad happened, so you took it as permission to keep going. That was mercy, not approval. That was time being extended, not erased. You mistook the delay for forgiveness. And that's what ruins most people. The illusion of safety. The idea that because nothing happened, yet nothing ever will. But warnings don't vanish, they build. Layer after layer, like pressure beneath the surface. Until one day the ground cracks, open and swallows everything. You might not even realize it's happening at first. Things just start to feel off. People pull away. Opportunities dry up. The things that used to work stop working. You try to force it, to fix it, to fight back. But it's too late. You're not being attacked. You're being corrected. You're being told, in the only language left, stop. That's the moment most people panic. They cry out, they plead, but there's no answer. because the time for begging passed, when the warnings were still whispers. Now the silence is the answer. You see, when you ignore enough chances to turn back, the world doesn't send another one. It starts removing the road altogether. You reach for the same habits, the same escapes, but they don't satisfy anymore. You look for comfort, but it doesn't feel the same. You look for control, but it slips through your fingers. That's not punishment. It's revelation. It's showing you what life looks like when grace leaves the room. And when that happens, you start to realize just how much protection you had when you thought you were alone. People say they want signs, but they don't. They want confirmation that what they're doing is fine. They don't want truth. They want validation. And when they don't get it, they call it silence. But silence isn't absence. It's consequence. It's what happens when you've already been told everything you needed to hear, and you still didn't change. You ignored the voice, the feeling, the sign, until the only thing left to hear was nothing. That's when it hits. The dread, the regret, the realization that this time it's final. And maybe that's what makes the silence so terrifying. It doesn't punish. It watches. It waits. It lets you feel the full weight of what you've done. You start remembering every moment you could have turned back, every hesitation you dismissed. You realize the warnings weren't there to scare you. They were there to save you. But now, there's no saving left to do, only learning. Only facing the aftermath you built with your own hands. That's what the final warning feels like. Not a voice from above, not thunder in the sky, but an emptiness that presses against your chest until you can't breathe. You'll want to call it bad luck, bad timing, someone else's fault. But deep down, you always knew. You just thought you had more time. You thought the rules didn't apply to you. You thought you could push the limits without consequences. And now, all that's left is the silence. That quiet, unforgiving silence that doesn't need to speak to be understood. Because the moment you stop hearing the warning, that's when you realize it was the last one. You ever notice how people love to play games with fate? They flip coins, make promises, test limits, as if the universe is some sort of dealer in a casino waiting to hand out mercy chips. They laugh when they get away with it once, twice, maybe 3 times. They start thinking they're untouchable. That's the most dangerous illusion. Thinking you're safe because nothing bad happened yet. You can almost hear them saying, "See, I knew it wasn't that serious." But that's the moment the clock starts ticking. The countdown doesn't start when you mess up. It starts when you ignore the warning. You keep crossing lines, telling yourself it's just one more time. One more lie, one more secret, one more night pretending you're in control. You even start believing your own excuses. You tell yourself everyone bends the rules a little. Everyone does what they have to do. You justify, rationalize, minimize, until you don't even recognize what you've become. You're no longer avoiding danger. You're dancing with it. You're looking it in the eye, daring it to strike, just to prove you're not afraid. And the irony, that arrogance doesn't make you strong. It makes you predictable. Every story of downfall begins the same way. Someone thought they'd be the exception. Someone thought they were smarter than the system, faster than karma, luckier than the rest. They thought their cleverness would shield them from consequence. But consequence doesn't negotiate. It's patient, methodical, cruelly consistent. It doesn't need to rush. It just waits for the moment when your confidence turns into carelessness. And it always does. That's the trick. It lets you dig your own trap. You think you're running the game, but the game was designed around your pride. The scariest part is how ordinary it feels before everything collapses. Nothing dramatic, no lightning bolt, no divine sign. Just stillness. You keep moving like everything's normal, but deep down you feel the shift. Things stop flowing. People stop trusting you. Your own reflection starts feeling like a stranger. That's the unraveling. That's how the fall begins. Quietly. Invisibly, while you're still pretending everything's fine. You tell yourself you can fix it later. You always say later. But later is the biggest lie you ever told yourself. You think you have time. You think there's still a chance to explain, to make it right, to pull yourself out before it's too late. But time isn't generous to those who abuse it. Every ignored warning shortens the rope a little more. Every choice you thought didn't matter was a thread in the web you're trapped in now. You thought you were free, but you've been tying your own knots the whole time. And when it finally tightens, you'll swear it happened suddenly. But it didn't. It was building all along, waiting for you to notice. It's funny how people only start praying when they're drowning, only start confessing when they're cornered, only start wishing they listened when silence becomes unbearable. That's when the mind starts replaying everything. Every red flag, every second chance. Every time someone tried to warn you. You remember the gut feeling, the uneasy thoughts, the voice that said, "Don't do it." But you shut it out. You convinced yourself it was fear, not instinct. And now, that same silence feels like judgment. Because deep down, you know. You had the warning. You just didn't want to hear it. There's a difference between ignorance and defiance. Ignorance is not knowing better. Defiance is knowing and doing it anyway. The world forgives the ignorant. But the defiant, they write their own punishment. It doesn't come from outside. It comes from within. It festers. It grows. Every lie, every choice, every ignored whisper becomes a weight pressing on your chest. You start to feel it when you wake up, when you go to sleep, when you try to smile and it doesn't reach your eyes. That's not bad luck. That's a soul trying to get your attention one last time. You can keep pretending it's fine, keep running faster, keep piling distractions on top of guilt. But eventually, you'll have to stop. And when you do, when everything's quiet and you're alone with yourself, you'll realize the truth was never hidden. It was always right there, staring at you. You just refused to see it because it required you to change. And change is what most people fear more than punishment. So they choose the slow death instead. the one where they smile on the outside and rot on the inside. There's a moment, just before the collapse, when you can almost feel the universe holding its breath. It's the pause before the storm, the space between the last warning and the first consequence. You won't know it's that moment until it passes. And by then, the silence will sound different, heavier, final. It won't be a warning anymore. It'll be a verdict. And the cruelest part is that deep down, you'll know. It didn't have to end this way. You were told. You were shown. You just didn't listen. You ever realize how silence can scream louder than words? When something deep inside you starts whispering, not with sound, but with that uneasy feeling that something's off. You try to ignore it, drown it with noise, music, laughter, work, people, anything that keeps you from hearing what your gut already knows. But the truth has this annoying habit of finding its way through the cracks. It seeps into your thoughts at night, crawls into your dreams, shows up in random moments when everything else goes quiet. That's not madness. That's awareness knocking. But most people, they'd rather cover their ears than open the door. You see, everyone thinks warnings come in thunder and lightning. Loud, obvious, impossible to miss. They expect a sign from the heavens, something dramatic that forces them to stop. But that's not how it works. The real warnings come softly. A strange feeling before you make that call. A hesitation before you trust that person. A flicker of guilt before you take that shortcut. You feel it, you always do, but you brush it off, convincing yourself it's just paranoia. You call it overthinking, when in reality, it's your soul trying to keep you from walking into your own destruction. People love to gamble with destiny. They think if the consequences aren't immediate, they don't exist. They laugh off small mistakes, thinking they'll handle it later. But life doesn't work on your schedule. Every ignored warning adds another brick to the wall you're building between yourself and peace. One lie here, one compromise there, and suddenly you're trapped inside something you built with your own hands. You start to wonder when things went wrong, as if the collapse happened overnight. It didn't. It was gradual. It was every small moment you said, "I'll deal with it tomorrow." There's this dangerous confidence that grows when you get away with things. You start believing the rules don't apply to you. You feel invincible, clever, untouchable. That's the delusion before the fall. You don't see the cracks forming beneath your feet because you're too busy admiring your reflection on the surface. But when it breaks, it doesn't give you a warning. It just swallows you whole. And when that happens, you'll look back and realize every red flag, every uneasy thought, every sleepless night was trying to tell you to stop. But pride doesn't listen. Pride is deaf until the silence becomes unbearable. And oh, that silence, it's not peaceful when you finally notice it. It's heavy. Suffocating. It presses down on you like a reminder of every chance you wasted. You'll start to feel eyes on you. Not real ones, but the kind that come from your own conscience, watching everything you've done. It won't shout. It'll whisper. In that mocking tone, you knew better, and you did. You always did. That's the cruel part. It's not that you were blind. You just refused to see. Because seeing means changing. And changing means letting go of the comfort that's been killing you slowly. There's something poetic about destruction when you think about it. It doesn't always come with fire and chaos. Sometimes it comes quietly, like a friend you haven't seen in a while. It wraps around you slowly until you can't tell where it began. You stop noticing the difference between what's real and what's a lie you told yourself. You even start to believe the lies are protecting you, when in truth, they're the reason you're falling apart. You start wearing a smile like a mask, trying to convince everyone, including yourself, that you're fine. But deep down, the cracks keep widening. And when you finally face the mirror, you won't see yourself. You'll see what's left of who you used to be. The version of you that used to believe in something. In good, in purpose, in control. That version will stare back at you silently, asking a question you won't be able to answer. Why didn't you stop? You won't have an answer because you knew. You just thought you could handle the fire without getting burned. That's the biggest lie people tell themselves. That they can play with danger and still walk away clean. No one does. Everyone pays. The only difference is when. Some people wait until everything's gone. The friends, the trust, the peace, the sense of self. Only then do they start begging for another chance. But by then, the warning has turned into consequence. And consequences don't negotiate. They don't pity you. They don't care if you've changed your mind. They just take what's owed. You can cry, apologize, promise to do better. But the universe doesn't bargain with regret. It collects in silence. It always does. So when you feel that pull in your chest, that strange stillness before a bad decision, don't dismiss it. That's not fear. That's not hesitation. That's clarity, trying to reach you before it's too late. Most people wait until the storm hits before they start praying for the sun. But the warning always comes first. The question is whether you'll hear it this time, or whether you'll keep pretending the silence means safety while the fire keeps getting closer. You know what's funny about people? They think danger always looks like a monster. Fangs, blood, chaos. Something obvious, something you can point at and say, there it is. But real danger doesn't wear a mask. It smiles. It comforts you. It tells you what you want to hear. It holds your hand while it leads you straight into the pit. That's the kind of danger that ruins you. Not because it's strong, but because you trust it. You see, betrayal isn't always done by enemies. Sometimes it's done by the voices you've learned to believe, the ones that whisper, "You're doing fine," when everything inside you knows you're not. There's this little moment that happens right before you make a mistake. That pause, that flicker of thought where something deep in you says, "I don't." You feel it, but you move anyway. And after, when it all falls apart, you'll remember that tiny whisper. You'll call it intuition, guilt, maybe even divine warning. But really, it's just the truth trying to get your attention before the chaos begins. Funny thing is, the truth doesn't scream. It never forces itself on you. It just waits. Waits for you to listen. But people don't like the truth. They like comfort, even if comfort is killing them slowly. You can tell a lot about someone by what they choose to ignore. Some people see the cracks forming and paint over them. They'd rather live in a house that looks perfect from the outside than fix what's breaking inside. Because fixing means facing the mess. And most people can't handle the mess. They'd rather keep pretending everything's fine until one day the roof caves in and they act surprised. But deep down, they knew, everyone always knows, denial is the prettiest form of destruction. It lets you smile while everything burns behind you. The problem with ignoring the truth is that it never disappears. It lingers. It watches. It waits for the right moment to remind you of what you've been avoiding. Maybe it's a conversation you didn't want to have. Maybe it's a habit you swore you'd quit. Maybe it's someone you should have walked away from long ago. Whatever it is, it always finds a way to come back. That's the thing about reality. It doesn't care how long you run. It's patient. It knows you'll get tired before it does. And when it finally catches up, it doesn't knock politely. It breaks in. It turns the lights on when you least expect it. You'll stand there, surrounded by the wreckage, trying to piece together when things got so bad. But it wasn't sudden, was it? No, it was slow. Gradual. Every ignored warning, every forced smile, every little compromise stacked up until the weight became too much. And you'll tell yourself it happened overnight, because that's easier than admitting you built the disaster yourself. There's a strange peace that comes with honesty, but people fear it more than pain, because pain you can hide. Honesty strips you bare. It shows you who you really are, not who you pretend to be. That's terrifying for most people. To look in the mirror and see the version of themselves they've been running from. The one who's tired, broken, ashamed. But that's the only version that can change. You can't heal from what you refuse to acknowledge. Yet most people would rather decorate their wounds than treat them. The world has taught you that pretending is easier. Smile for the picture, act like you're fine, say. It's okay when it's not. But pretending is a poison. It doesn't kill you fast. It kills you quietly, bit by bit. You lose your spark, your curiosity, your sense of purpose. You start existing instead of living. You wake up one day and realize you've become a stranger to yourself. That's what ignoring the warning signs does. It doesn't explode. It erases you slowly until there's nothing left but a shell that laughs on command. And maybe that's the cruelest part of all. People will praise that version of you. They'll say you're strong because you keep going, when really, you're just numb. They'll admire your calm while you're dying inside. No one sees the cracks unless you show them. But showing them feels like weakness, doesn't it? So you stay silent. You carry the weight. You keep smiling. And the trap tightens with every day you pretend it's not there. There's a freedom in truth, but it costs everything. It costs your comfort, your illusions, your excuses. It demands you stand naked in the storm and admit what you've done, what you've ignored, what you've become. Most people don't have the stomach for that, but the few who do, they find something the rest never will: clarity. Not peace, not happiness, clarity. Because clarity is what comes before change. And without it, you'll keep walking in circles, convincing yourself that the walls closing in are just shadows. So maybe, just maybe, the pain you're feeling isn't punishment. Maybe it's mercy. Maybe it's the last warning before everything collapses. Because if you don't listen now, if you keep pretending you don't hear it, the silence that follows won't be peaceful. It'll be the kind that echoes forever. The kind that reminds you, you had your chance to stop it. You ever notice how guilt has a sound? Not loud, not obvious. It doesn't roar or cry. It hums. Low, constant, right beneath your thoughts. You can laugh, you can talk, you can distract yourself with work, noise, or people. But it's still there, whispering that something's not right. You try to ignore it, drown it out, but the more you resist, the louder it becomes. It's not trying to torture you, no. It's trying to save you. It's the alarm that goes off before you destroy yourself completely. But people treat guilt like a curse, when really, it's the last remaining proof that you still have a conscience you see. Guilt doesn't visit the innocent. It visits the aware. It's a sign that some part of you still knows the difference between what's right and what's easy. You can lie to everyone else. You can play the role. You can even convince yourself that everything's fine. But the part of you that remembers what truth feels like never stops watching. That's why guilt hurts. It's your reflection staring back, asking how far you've fallen from what you once believed. You can't escape it with distractions, not permanently. You can numb it, bury it, cover it with achievements or smiles, but it waits. Guilt has patience. It's the shadow that doesn't leave when the lights go out, and yet you fear it.